Jin Tong, try this and see if you can remain within Xiao Bai a little longer, Han Li said, passing the talisman over. Jin Tong accepted it obediently and pressed it to her body. In an instant, it dissolved into a gentle sphere of white light and merged into her form. Luminous white spirit runes surfaced upon her brow, weaving themselves into cloud-like patterns identical to those once etched upon the talisman. A strange expression flickered across her face. She then instructed Xiao Bai to open its mouth, transforming into a streak of golden radiance and shooting straight inside. Xiao Bai complied without hesitation, swallowing the light whole. An hour slipped by in silence. Jin Tong did not emerge, and Xiao Bai began to pace around the carriage anxiously, its unease plain to see. Han Li, however, was heartened and remained patiently where he stood. Another hour passed before Xiao Bai suddenly stiffened. It opened its mouth, and Jin Tong flew out once more in a streak of gold. The spirit patterns on her forehead had vanished, and her face looked slightly pale. Han Li did not question her immediately. Instead, he produced a green jade ruler and handed it to her. Jin Tong seized it and crunched it down in a few quick bites, as if chewing on hard candy. A layer of azure light washed over her face, then faded, leaving her complexion noticeably improved. "Well?" Han Li asked. "It worked, uncle." Jin Tong replied with a bright smile. "Before, I always felt terribly drowsy inside Xiao Bai's stomach. With the talisman, I felt much better." "If you had enough of these talismans, how long do you think you could last inside?" Han Li asked. "At most another hour," Jin Tong answered after some thought. Han Li nodded quietly. Even with the soul armor talisman strengthening her soul, Jin Tong could not remain inside Xiao Bai for long. At best, she could endure roughly 3 hours at a time, at the cost of 2 talismans. Though brief, it was still a vast improvement over before. Having made up his mind, Han Li waved his sleeve and produced several more spirit treasures for Jin Tong to eat. He then returned to the exchange section of the Reincarnation Palace interface and purchased over 100 soul armor talismans without hesitation. This was no time for frugality. Just as he was about to withdraw the crimson light barrier, joy suddenly flashed across his face. Someone had already responded to the mission he had released. He hastily formed an incantation seal, and crimson light surged forth, condensing into a blurry red figure whose facial features could not be discerned. Only the words Phoenix 19 were clearly etched upon its mask. "Since you accepted the mission, I assume you have a method allowing golden immortals to wield high zenith stage immortal treasures?" Han Li asked bluntly. "Before answering, I must know what type of treasure you intend to use," Phoenix 19 replied. The voice sounded male, though oddly high-pitched. "A flying immortal treasure," Han Li said. "In that case, it should be manageable," Phoenix 19 replied. "Flying treasures do not demand excessive immortal spiritual power. However, I need to know the restrictions placed upon it." Han Li frowned slightly but said nothing. "Do you think I am prying into your secrets?" Phoenix 19 continued. "Without knowing the restrictions, I cannot determine the optimal method." Han Li remained silent, his gaze steady. The flying carriage had once belonged to Gongshu Ju, and the heavenly court's reach extended across the true immortal realm. He could not afford to expose himself as Gongshu Ju's killer. Yet Phoenix 19's words were not without reason. After careful consideration, Han Li provided a vague description of the carriage's restrictions. Phoenix 19 laughed softly. "Fellow Taoist, you possess an exceptional flying treasure. The restrictions are quite sophisticated, but they fall well within my expertise. I can offer 3 methods that allow you to access over 80% of its power, each with its own strengths and weaknesses." Encouraged, Han Li urged him to continue. "All 3 are closely guarded techniques," Phoenix 19 said with a chuckle. "Your offered compensation is somewhat lacking." "If the methods are effective, I will pay accordingly," Han Li replied coolly. If not, he left the threat unspoken. Phoenix 19's tone turned cold. "Do not underestimate me. These are secret techniques passed down from 100 Creations Mountain." Han Li's heart stirred. He had heard of this place from the Stemborer Queen back in the spirit realm. The 100 Meridian refinement mantra he once cultivated also originated from that same mountain. Clearly, this was no ordinary sect. Realizing his slip, Phoenix 19 cleared his throat. "Here are the 3 methods and their prices," The choice is yours. With a sweep of his sleeve, 3 points of light expanded into 3 floating light screens filled with dense text. The first detailed a secret art that forcibly stimulated the flying carriage's internal spiritual power to compensate for a golden immortal's deficiency, allowing over 90% of the carriage's power to be unleashed. The price, 5,000 immortal origin stones. However, it caused severe damage to the carriage and would quickly exhaust its spiritual power, rendering it useless in the long term. Hanli frowned and turned to the second screen. This method fused the immortal spiritual power of multiple golden immortals, temporarily elevating it to the high zenith stage and allowing nearly full use of the carriage. Its price was 10,000 immortal origin stones. Yet the requirements were steep, at least 3 late golden immortals or 8 mid-golden immortals. With Hanli's current group, only about 60% of the power could be achieved. Finally, he examined the third screen. This array-based method also elevated combined power to the high zenith stage, but it drew directly upon immortal origin stones rather than cultivators. With enough stones, full power could theoretically be achieved. The cost to sustain it, however, was astronomical, making it impractical for most. Perhaps for this reason, the method itself cost only 1,000 immortal origin stones. "Have you decided?" Phoenix 19 asked. "I have," Hanli replied calmly. "I'll take the third method." Phoenix 19 was visibly startled. Given its flaws, this choice was unexpected. "Are you certain?" he asked again. "I am." The exchange concluded swiftly. Soon after, a white jade slip emerged from the teleportation array. Hanli grasped it and immersed his spiritual sense within. An entire hour passed before he withdrew it, admiration flickering across his face. The technique was not only viable but perfectly tailored to his flying carriage, clearly modified specifically for him. Phoenix 19's mastery far surpassed his own. Hanli committed the name Phoenix 19 firmly to memory. Then, summoning the necessary materials, he began setting up the array without delay. Hanli labored without pause for 3 days and nights, finally completing a hexagonal array at the heart of the flying carriage. Though the array itself was not overly intricate, the dense weave of lines and runes upon its surface overlapped and twisted together, making one feel dizzy at a single glance. Each vertex of the hexagon held a thumb-sized aperture, and dozens more such holes were scattered across the formation. After briefly surveying his handiwork, Hanli drew in a steady breath, then retrieved a series of immortal origin stones and carefully embedded them into the apertures one by one. With a sweep of his sleeve, he released an incantation seal. At once, the array came alive with a low buzzing hum, lighting up in soft radiance. The immortal origin stones trembled faintly, emitting streams of spiritual light that coursed through the engraved lines like flowing blood, all converging toward the array's central nexus. There, a sphere of dazzling white light took shape, surging with astonishing spiritual power fluctuations unmistakably at the high zenith stage. Only then did Hanli finally let out a breath of relief. The array matched Phoenix 19's description perfectly, proving that the vast effort and resources he had invested were not in vain. As expected, however, it devoured immortal spiritual power at a frightening rate, and he could clearly sense the energy within the immortal origin stones draining away rapidly. This supply would not last long. With no better alternatives available, Hanli stowed Taoist Shi away, then began chanting while forming hand seals. The white sphere at the center of the array stretched and elongated, transforming into a towering pillar of light that poured directly into the flying carriage. Instantly, the spirit patterns etched into the carriage blazed far more brilliantly than before, while the green barrier surrounding it churned violently, condensing into a radiant green cloud. The flying carriage surged forward, its speed multiplying several-fold as it shot ahead while trembling uncontrollably. The velocity was now so extreme that Hanli found it difficult to fully restrain the carriage's movement. The sudden turbulence startled both Jin Tong and Xiao Bai awake from their naps, and they hurriedly stabilized themselves, fearing they might be flung from the carriage. Maintaining a solemn expression, Hanli rapidly formed one hand seal after another, exerting all his strength to bring the carriage under control. As time passed, he gradually adjusted to its terrifying speed, and only then did he relax slightly. With this velocity, he finally felt a measure of confidence that they might escape the pursuing gold-devouring immortal. Jin Tong, from now on, stay inside Xiao Bai's stomach as much as possible. That way, the gold-devouring beetle won't be able to detect you for long. As for the soul armor talismans, save them for true danger, Han Li instructed. Fully aware of the gravity of their situation, Jin Tong complied without complaint, transforming into a streak of golden light and flying straight into Xiao Bai's mouth. Han Li then sat down cross-legged, continuing to pilot the flying carriage with a deeply contemplative expression. Even with Jin Tong hidden and the carriage's speed vastly increased, the thought of confronting a late high-zenith stage gold-devouring immortal still weighed heavily on his mind. The only way to guarantee survival would be to break through to the Jade Immortal stage himself, but such a feat was utterly impossible in such a short time. No matter how many pills he possessed, even advancing to the late Golden Immortal stage would be unrealistic, let alone reaching high zenith. His brows knitted tightly as worry crept in. But then a sudden thought struck him. With a flip of his hand, he summoned a green gourd in a flash of light, the profound heavenly treasure he had seized from Q Ling. Since leaving the infernal Frost Immortal Manor, he had been endlessly occupied and had nearly forgotten about it. After studying the gourd for a moment, Han Li flicked his sleeve, sending several streaks of azure light flying forth. They revealed themselves as array flags, which landed near Xiao Bai. An azure light barrier instantly formed, enclosing the startled beast within. Han Li then raised a hand, and the green gourd floated into the air, radiating gentle green light. He extended his spiritual sense into its interior. The space within was unchanged. Green light revolved slowly, forming a vast vortex. At its center hovered a small azure sword and a miniature 3-story pavilion, the azure bamboo cloud swarm sword, and the pavilion immortal treasure he had placed inside earlier. The sword now emitted soft azure light, its immense spiritual power noticeably purer and more restrained, much like the pavilion treasure. After some time, Han Li withdrew his spiritual sense, a thoughtful look appearing on his face. Since both treasures remained unharmed after such a long stay within the gourd, it was evident that immortal treasures could be safely stored inside. With a sweep of his sleeve, Han Li summoned 3 more azure bamboo cloud swarm swords and pointed at the gourd. A flash of green light burst forth, drawing the swords inside. He repeated this process again and again, sending his remaining swords into the gourd in batches before setting it down before him. Strengthening the swords was not his true goal. As a profound heavenly treasure, the gourd was second only to the heaven-controlling vial among his possessions. Though it lacked obvious offensive power, fully refining it could prove invaluable against the gold-devouring immortal. Focusing on the gourd's opening, Han Li noticed its color was slightly paler than the rest, a sign it had been harvested before full maturity. After a brief pause, he produced the heaven-controlling vial, within which a single drop of faintly glowing green liquid rolled gently. Tilting the vial, he allowed the drop to fall onto the gourd's pale opening. Instantly, the gourd's green radiance flared several-fold as countless runes surged forth, boiling and churning violently. Powerful law fluctuations erupted outward, stirring the surrounding world's origin chi into chaos and forming multicolored orbs of spiritual light. As the flying carriage sped onward, these orbs were left behind, trailing a brilliant rainbow in its wake. Han Li paid them no mind, watching the gourd intently as the green liquid trembled, then slowly seeped inside. The runes gradually calmed, and the gourd returned to normal. Upon inspection, neither its exterior nor its internal space showed any obvious change. Han Li frowned slightly, but did not lose heart. When he had infused the profound heavenly spirit/sword with the same liquid, the effects had taken a long time to appear. Patience was required. He rose, set up a small array in one corner of the carriage, and placed the heaven-controlling vial within it. Returning to his seat, he released a stream of azure light that drew the gourd back into his body. A month passed in the blink of an eye. Beneath a starlit sky, the green flying carriage streaked forward like a shooting star, far beyond the Dark Star Canyon. Han Li stood gazing down at the sprawling mountain range below, his brows deeply furrowed. Throughout the month, Jintong had kept him informed of the gold-devouring immortal's condition. According to her, it had nearly recovered its strength and likely broken free of the origin separation law chains. Hanli glanced skyward, then retrieved the heaven-controlling vial once more, dripping another drop of green liquid onto the gourd. The same dazzling reaction followed before subsiding as before. His expression remained steady as he moved to return the vial, but then his eyes flickered sharply. He stowed the vial away and rushed toward Xiaobai, whose face was filled with concern. Jintong says, "Is it coming after us?" Hanli interrupted grimly. "Yes," Xiaobai replied after a pause, fear evident in its voice. "And it's moving even faster than we are, about twice as fast." Hanli's brows tightened. Producing the soul armor talismans he had acquired earlier, he tossed them all into Xiaobai's mouth. "Jintong, stay in there as long as you can." Turning away, he began rapidly casting incantation seals into the flying carriage and the hexagonal array. The carriage flared with intense light, abruptly changing direction as it shot off along a new path. Meanwhile, far behind Hanli, a blazing sphere of golden radiance, nearly an acre in size, tore through the heavens amid thunderous rumbling. Within that brilliant glow was an enormous golden beetle, its wings beating with all their might. This was none other than the high-zenith gold-devouring immortal, and a trace of surprise flickered across its fierce visage. It could clearly sense that its quarry was only at the golden immortal stage, yet the speed at which that target fled was astonishing. Although it still held the advantage, the target's velocity exceeded even that of most high-zenith true spirits. Suddenly, the beetle halted midair, its expression turning perplexed. The target's aura had vanished without warning. This was exactly what had occurred previously in Darkstar Canyon. During its recovery from injury, the same phenomenon had happened several times. The aura would abruptly disappear, leaving nothing to grasp. After a brief moment of contemplation, the gold-devouring immortal resumed its pursuit along the same path. Roughly 3 hours later, the aura resurfaced, but from a completely different direction and at a far greater distance. The golden beetle let out a cold snort, yet showed no real concern as it turned and gave chase once more. High above a mountain range, the green flying carriage streaked through the sky. Jintong had just emerged from Xiaobai's body. Her face was pale and her breathing uneven, while Xiaobai drooped its head in clear dejection. Seeing Jintong's poor condition, Hanli frowned slightly and flicked his sleeve, releasing a pile of high-grade spirit treasures. Jintong sat down silently, picked one up, and stuffed it into her mouth. Xiaobai longed to join the feast, but knowing Jintong needed the nourishment more, it restrained itself and lay down on the carriage. Just then, a golden storage ring dropped before it, accompanied by Hanli's calm voice. "Xiaobai, you eat as well." "Thank you, master." Xiaobai sprang upright and swallowed the ring in one gulp. Hanli then resumed sitting cross-legged, focusing on piloting the carriage. With Jintong no longer concealed, he did not bother changing direction and pressed forward at full speed. Over 2 hours later, Jintong rose, her complexion fully restored. Hanli immediately had her hide within Xiaobai once again before altering course for a second time. The gold-devouring immortal was furious when it sensed the aura vanish yet again. Each disappearance allowed the target to widen the gap, an infuriating outcome, yet it had no choice but to continue. 3 hours later, the aura returned, once more from a different direction and still far beyond reach. By now, however, the beetle had calmed itself. It had realized that its prey could periodically conceal its aura at fixed intervals. As long as this concealment could not be maintained indefinitely, escape was impossible. And indeed, over the following months, the gold-devouring immortal failed to catch its quarry. Yet the quarry could not truly shake it off either. The aura would vanish again and again, only to reappear far away along a new path. Despite its superior speed, the beetle was dragged along helplessly, led in circles like a hound chasing shadows, a situation that filled it with seething frustration. The green flying carriage sped above a lush forest. Hanli appeared more relaxed as he guided it onward. As long as this balance held, the gold-devouring immortal would not be able to catch them. Though the immortal origin stones were being consumed at an alarming rate, his reserves were vast enough to sustain this for decades. In his mind, The pursuer was surely bound to give up eventually. The true problem lay elsewhere. As they pushed deeper into the primordial land, everything became increasingly unfamiliar. They had already been attacked countless times by primordial beasts. Though each crisis had been overcome, this was clearly no long-term solution. The deeper they went, the greater the danger. At this moment, Jin Tong crunched on a spirit treasure while Xiao Bai rested with eyes closed. Suddenly, a hideous screech echoed from the forest below, the sound alone stabbing painfully into Han Li's soul. He leapt to his feet and saw a massive gray shadow surge upward, almost as fast as the carriage itself. Activating his bright sight spirit eyes, Han Li identified it as an enormous gray bird with a fleshy black comb atop its head. Instead of feathers, short gray fur clung to its body, giving it a grotesque appearance. Its aura was immense, reaching the pinnacle of the golden immortal stage. Unwilling to be entangled with such a foe, Han Li swept his sleeve and released a small white flag. It expanded to several thousand feet, unfurling into a vast sea of clouds. Spiritual light surged, and boundless white mist poured forth, rolling toward the bird. The gray bird shrieked as its comb flared with dazzling radiance. With a violent flap of its wings, a gust of gray wind erupted, forming a terrifying tornado imbued with law power. The tornado shredded through the clouds and surged straight toward the carriage, filled with countless razor-sharp blades of wind. Han Li halted the carriage at once and released 3 yellow badges, positioning them to the front and sides. Yellow light burst forth, forming a thick barrier. Though battered relentlessly by the wind blades, the barrier held firm and even repelled some of the attacks, forcing the gray bird to dodge warily. At the same time, Han Li sent a stream of azure light into the white flag. Fresh mist surged out, transforming into 7 or 8 misty dragons that coiled tightly around the gray bird, restraining it briefly. Han Li did not press the advantage. Instead, he formed another hand seal, and the flying carriage darted around the bird as a streak of green light. Moments later, a dull thud echoed behind them as the bird broke free and gave chase once more, but it was quickly left far behind. Afterward, Han Li let out a soft sigh and stored away the flag and badges. Less than 2 hours later, a buzzing roar erupted ahead as a massive purple cloud burst from the forest below and swept toward them. It was a swarm of enormous purple hornets, each as large as a millstone, their hooked stingers glowing blue with deadly poison. Han Li summoned the yellow badges again and released a crimson flag that unleashed a sea of flames around the carriage. Without slowing, they plunged straight through the swarm, finally breaking free after nearly 2 hours of struggle. By then, Han Li's unease had deepened. The farther they traveled, the more obstacles they faced, enduring dozens of attacks from primordial beasts and tribes each day. Though he was prepared, their speed was being steadily eroded. What troubled him most was that the gold-devouring immortal faced no such hindrance. According to Jin Tong, no primordial creature dared challenge it. With no better option, Han Li could only press onward, yet despite all his efforts, the distance between them and their relentless pursuer continued to shrink. 2 months later, a jade-green flying carriage streaked above an ancient forest, dragging behind it a long, radiant tail of emerald light. Without warning, it ground to a halt, and Han Li calmly replenished the array beneath the carriage with a fresh batch of immortal origin stones. The consumption was frighteningly fast, yet there was no alternative if they wished to keep the gold-devouring immortal at bay. Inside the carriage, Jin Tong sat cross-legged with a gloomy expression, while Xiao Bai lay sprawled on the floor, eyes unfocused. Breaking the silence, Jin Tong suddenly asked, worry plain on her face, "Uncle, if we really can't escape anymore, will you abandon me and flee on your own?" A trace of exhaustion flickered through Han Li's eyes as he laughed softly. "If you have the leisure to think about such nonsense, you should focus on recovering faster and hurry back into Xiao Bai's stomach." "That thing is chasing us faster and faster," Jin Tong sighed miserably. "I'm spending nearly all my time inside Xiao Bai now. If I suffocate to death in there before it catches me, that would be far too unjust." "You're the one complaining?" Xiao Bai groaned. "With you climbing in and out of my stomach all the time, I've been nauseous for days. Next time that gold-devouring immortal shows up, I might just vomit you right back out." If you don't want me in your stomach, then you can crawl into mine instead, Jintong shot back, her gaze turning sharp and predatory. After all the natural and immortal treasures you've eaten, swallowing you might let me break through just like that pill cauldron did. Then I'd be the hunter instead of the prey. Xiaobai immediately shrank away, thoroughly intimidated. Jintong was about to continue teasing when her smile froze. She spun toward Hanli and shouted urgently, "Uncle, it's coming again!" "Get back inside, Xiaobai," Hanli ordered, his expression tightening. The flying carriage surged forward at once. Jintong slapped a soul armor talisman onto herself, then transformed into a tiny golden beetle and darted into Xiaobai's mouth, while Xiaobai reverted into a white jade pendant and was stored away. "Uncle," Jintong transmitted anxiously, "it's even faster than before. Can we speed up?" "This is our limit for now," Hanli replied. "At this rate, how long before it catches us?" "If it keeps this speed, no more than a month and a half," Jintong answered without hesitation. Hanli's brows knit deeply. After a moment, he produced the map given by the beast race, studied it carefully, then suddenly halted the carriage. "You betrayed my trust first, so don't blame me for what comes next." The carriage abruptly changed direction and sped away. Another month passed in the blink of an eye. The jade carriage skimmed across a vast mountain range, eventually arriving at a crimson valley. Hanli stopped at a distance and observed. Carved into the opposing mountain faces were two enormous humanoid lions, one clasping its arms in prayer, the other brandishing a massive axe. Between them stretched a colossal arched stone bridge, patrolled by foreign beings clad in bone armor. Each of these beings stood twice the height of a normal human, with terrifying physiques. Their human-like faces were ringed by 5 or 6 lion heads, forming a grotesque halo. This was Red Spiral Valley, the domain of the Menace Lion tribe, one of the beast race's 8 holy tribes. Beneath the bridge yawned 3 gigantic half-circular caverns, torrents of water roaring from them and filling the air with dense mist. Hanli had altered course after realizing how close this place was. Along the way, Jintong had repeatedly hidden within Xiaobai, yet the gold-devouring immortal drew ever nearer. In recent days, Hanli could already sense its presence without Jintong's warnings. After a brief inspection, Hanli formed a hand seal and murmured an incantation, suppressing his aura until it was nearly non-existent. He dove from above into the murky river below, splashing softly before sinking rapidly. Upon reaching the riverbed, he trudged upstream through the soft sediment, carefully refraining from using immortal power. The terrain was treacherous, violent eddies and whirlpools raging like hidden weapons. Yet Hanli's formidable body carried him forward unhindered. Soon, he reached the base of the arched bridge. At that moment, strange fluctuations rippled through the water ahead. Hundreds of massive black fish, each 10 feet long and armored in metallic scales, surged toward him, bearing rows of sharp teeth. Hanli frowned slightly, then sighed inwardly. Activating his reversal true axis, he slipped through the swarm in an instant. Some of his time dial runes had recovered, allowing him to employ the mantra-treasured axis once more. Above, the guards sensed the faint disturbance. "Raise the alarm! This could be an insect race attack," the leader barked. "It's probably just a demon beast," another argued. "The black-scale fish can handle it." "Our chief is absent. We cannot take chances." "Sound the alarm," the leader insisted. A horn soon echoed through the valley, followed by others in succession. Armored Menace Lion warriors poured from the caves, organizing into squads to scour the river, while massive arqueballistas swung into position, poison-coated bolts aimed below. Hanli halted beside a large rock and transmitted calmly, "Come out now and draw it here." "Leave it to me, uncle," Jintong replied with a sly tone. Golden light flashed as she emerged, standing beside him. Once steady, she closed her eyes and released her aura without restraint. On an altar within the valley, a Menace Lion elder in red robes stiffened in shock. "That aura, it belongs to that insect spirit!" Grand Elder Yintong stared in disbelief. "Impossible! Our chief said the insect race is at Dark Star Canyon." "Wait, this aura is different." The elder's voice faltered, his face draining of color. "What is it?" Yintong demanded. "There's another one approaching," the elder whispered, trembling. "Another insect spirit, and this one is at the high zenith stage." Yintong could scarcely trust his own hearing. After a heartbeat of stunned silence, he abruptly spun around and barked orders with a thunderous voice. Yin Liang, hurry and report this to the chief. Yin Feng, evacuate the women, children, and elders at once. Everyone else, prepare for battle. 7 or 8 elders of the Menace Lion tribe stood upon the altar, their cultivation ranging from late True Immortal to early Golden Immortal. At Yin Tong's command, they moved without hesitation, each carrying out their assigned task. Beneath the massive boulder embedded in the riverbed, Han Li clearly sensed a terrifying aura surging closer and closer. The gold-devouring immortal's presence was vast and violent, and within it roiled an unmistakable fury, so unstable that it felt on the verge of eruption. What did you do, Jin Tong? Han Li asked with a frown. Its aura is in chaos. It feels like it's enraged beyond reason. Jin Tong chuckled lightly. Nothing much. I only asked how it feels to be able to see me, yet still not be able to eat me. Han Li stared at her. You can communicate with it directly? Not really, Jin Tong replied with a shrug. From far away, I can only sense it. But now that it's close, it's like voice transmission. I don't know how to describe it. It feels as though there's an invisible thread tying us together, and neither of us can break free. Han Li was about to probe further when a deafening explosion thundered through the distance. In the next instant, violent shockwaves swept across the valley, and the river below surged upward like an inverted waterfall. The arched stone bridge spanning the river shattered down its center. Upon the collapsing remnants stood the remaining warriors of the Menace Lion tribe, their expressions grim and furious. These were the fighters who had not been dispatched to Dark Star Canyon, nor tasked with evacuation, numbering only 4,000 to 5,000. Yin Shen rose into the sky above the broken bridge and shouted coldly, "Why would a mighty insect spirit such as yourself attack our Menace Lion tribe instead of confronting the Beast Race army?" Far away, tens of thousands of feet in the air, the colossal gold-devouring immortal hovered, its wings beating with a thunderous roar. It ignored Yin Shen entirely, sweeping its furious gaze back and forth across the valley before letting out a deafening roar. "Come out!" The sound rolled like heavenly thunder, shaking the valley to its core. The remaining fragments of the stone bridge crumbled and fell apart under the crushing sound waves. Yin Shen barely managed to steady himself, disbelief flashing across his face. "Who are you looking for?" he demanded. The gold-devouring immortal paid him no heed. Instead, it descended like a collapsing golden mountain, hurtling straight toward the valley entrance. "Menace Lion warriors, to battle!" Yin Tong roared. Yet the gold-devouring immortal ignored them all, continuing its devastating charge. The tribe's warriors hurriedly rose into the air and retreated deeper into the valley. At the same time, several hundred enormous griffin-like demon beasts soared up from within the valley, tens of thousands of feet away. They opened their beaks and released eerie cries, like infants wailing in grief. The strange sound waves they unleashed were amplified by the horn-shaped terrain of the valley, growing increasingly terrifying as they surged toward the gold-devouring immortal. Even though Han Li and Jin Tong stood outside the direct path of the sound waves, Han Li's head throbbed with sharp pain, dizziness and nausea washing over him. He immediately waved his sleeve, summoning a spherical light barrier that enclosed both of them, and only then did the discomfort subside. The valley narrowed sharply at its entrance. Within this constricted passage, the sound waves multiplied in power countless times over. The gold-devouring immortal plunged directly into them, and invisible shock waves exploded violently, as if unseen objects were shattering into fragments and scattering in all directions. The colossal insect spirit froze in midair. The clarity vanished from its eyes, leaving them dull and unfocused, as though its spiritual sense had been obliterated. "The Menace Lion tribe really has some tricks," Jin Tong said excitedly. "Its soul is badly injured. It'll stay dazed for a long time. Uncle, should we take this chance to kill it?" Han Li remained silent for a moment before replying. "These sound waves can harm the soul, but they seem better suited for physical suppression. Even I was affected, but if I'd been caught directly, I would have only been disoriented for a few breaths. Does it make sense that it's been incapacitated so completely?" "You think it's pretending?" Jin Tong asked in shock. "There's no need to guess," Han Li replied calmly. "Someone else will test it for us." Above the valley, Yintong hesitated briefly as he observed the motionless, gold-devouring immortal. Then he clenched his teeth. Attack! An elder hovering near the valley entrance sliced open his palm, splashing blood onto his staff as he began chanting in the ancient tongue of true spirits. A bizarre aura spread throughout the valley, and crimson mist billowed forth, enveloping everything within it. Within the mist, the eyes of the menaced lion warriors turned blood red. Dark crimson light glowed upon their cheeks as lion-shaped totems emerged on their faces. With the totem's appearance, their bodies swelled to hundreds of feet tall, their humanoid features transforming fully into fierce lion visages. With a thunderous roar, they surged into the sky, surrounding the gold-devouring immortal and attacking together. Though their bodies had grown immense, they were still tiny compared to the insect spirit. Claws raked against its body in a storm of attacks, producing a continuous clang of metal-like impacts. Yet the gold-devouring immortal's body remained unscathed. Find its weak points, Yintong shouted, charging straight toward its eyes. The other warriors followed suit, striking at joints, wing bases, and any vulnerable spot they could find, led by the tribe's elders. As Yintong neared the right eye, the crimson totem on his face blazed brilliantly. Vast spiritual power surged through his meridians, gathering into his right arm. His arm swelled grotesquely, glowing with radiant red light, awkward in proportion yet terrifying in the power it contained. Let's see if you can keep pretending. Though Han Li could not see the battle clearly from the riverbed, the violent fluctuations told him everything. Yintong had poured all his strength into this single strike and was now directly before the gold-devouring immortal's eye, close enough for his claws to reflect within its surface. At that instant, the dullness vanished from the gold-devouring immortal's eyes. Its gaze snapped onto Yintong, icy and perfectly lucid. A chill seized Yintong's entire body, but retreat was no longer possible. He roared for everyone to withdraw while driving his claws forward with all his might. A sharp clang rang out as sparks flew. A gash over 100 feet long was carved into the insect's closed eyelid, and semi-transparent blood flowed from the wound. The eyelid trembled, then snapped open. In the next breath, the gold-devouring immortal's forelimbs swept through the air like lightning. Crescent-shaped arcs of translucent golden light burst forth, scything through the battlefield. Only a few hundred warriors managed to escape after Yintong's warning. Everyone else, including Yintong himself, was cleaved in half. Truly enraged, the gold-devouring immortal beat its wings furiously. Its massive body spun, transforming into a colossal golden storm that ripped through the air. The remaining bodies and nascent souls were annihilated instantly, reduced to dust so fine that even their blood scattered like mist. The surviving warriors fled deeper into the valley. The last remaining elder gazed skyward, fury and despair etched across his face. The women, children, and elders are still behind us, he sighed. We cannot retreat any further. Resolve hardened his expression. He roared, I offer my blood and my body to Master Zhu Ling. Please descend. With that, he shut his eyes and drove his staff straight through his own heart.